Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Drift. Tonight we'll drift together through something vast and nearly invisible. Not a star, not a planet, but a silence that stretches for 2 billion light years. It surrounds us, holds us, and for most of human history, we never knew it was there. This is not a story about what we can see, but about what we cannot. It is about a hole in the universe, a gentle hollow that cradles our galaxy like a whisper in an endless breath. The scientists call it the KBC void. To the mind, it may sound like emptiness. To the heart, it feels like the quiet between two waves. In 2013, 3 astronomers began mapping galaxies, tracing where the light had gathered since the dawn of time. Ryan Keenan, Amy Barger, and Lennox Cowie counted 35,000 galaxies across unimaginable distances. They expected balance, a kind of evenness to the stars. But the sky had another plan. Everywhere they looked, there were fewer galaxies than there should be. Not a little fewer, not a passing chance, but 20% fewer, stretching outward in all directions. What they found was a sphere of low density so wide that it dwarfed every other structure ever seen. A hollow region 1 billion light-years across, with us quietly adrift inside it. They called it the KBC void, after their initials, though the name feels too simple for something so profound. It is a discovery that unsettles and soothes at once. We live inside a cosmic valley, surrounded by the distant glow of denser lands. Science tells us that on large enough scales, the universe should appear uniform. Galaxies gather in clusters, yes, and between them are empty pockets. But if you zoom out far enough, it all averages to sameness. The KBC void defies that rule. It is too big, too empty, too unlikely. Statistically, it should not exist. The odds of such a void forming by random chance are less than 1 in 1,000, and yet here we are, suspended in its center like dust floating in a sunbeam. The more scientists examined the data, the clearer it became. This emptiness is real, measurable, and enormous. It bends light, it warps distance, and it quietly shifts our view of everything beyond it. The cosmic landscape is not as even as we once believed. It ripples, and we happen to live in one of its deepest hollows. When the idea first emerged, it seemed almost poetic. An entire civilization unknowingly living inside a hole in the fabric of space. But soon the poetry turned into deep questions. If our part of the cosmos is so different, what does that mean for every measurement we make? When we observe distant supernovae, are we seeing the universe as it truly is, or are we seeing a local distortion? The void stretches not only through space, but through our understanding. It is possible that the faster expansion we measure around us is not a universal truth, but a local illusion. Within this emptiness, gravity weakens and galaxies drift apart more quickly. The universe seems to expand faster here than elsewhere. What we thought was acceleration might simply be perspective. We are measuring reality from inside a hollow. This idea touches a mystery that has haunted cosmology for decades: the Hubble tension. 2 methods of measuring how fast the universe expands give 2 different answers. One looks at the oldest light, the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. That light tells us the universe should be expanding at 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec. The other method, using nearby galaxies and supernovae, gives a higher number, around 73. Both are precise, both should agree, and yet they do not. For years, Scientists searched for hidden errors. Perhaps the instruments were flawed or the data misread. But what if the difference is not an error at all? What if it is the void itself, subtly bending the flow of space and time? Inside a vast underdense region, the laws of gravity play differently. The matter outside the void pulls on everything within it, stretching galaxies outward. It adds a quiet, outward motion to all things, making the local expansion seem faster. The deeper the void, the stronger this illusion. It could explain the Hubble tension entirely. We are not mismeasuring the cosmos. We are simply viewing it through the curve of emptiness. It is a humbling thought. We are not at the center of the universe, only at the center of our own hollow. Our perception of cosmic truth depends on where we happen to drift. The implications reach beyond numbers. For centuries, science has sought to remove humanity from the center of things. Earth is not the center of the solar system. The sun is not the center of the galaxy. The galaxy is not the center of the universe. And now, perhaps, we discover that we live in a rare hollow unlike any other. It feels like the universe has quietly placed us somewhere unusual. That idea is both beautiful and uncomfortable. The cosmological principle tells us that the universe should look roughly the same from any vantage point. But if we inhabit a vast void, then our position is not typical. We are living in an exception to the rule. The universe, it seems, is not perfectly democratic. It holds pockets of stillness and concentration, and we reside in one of its deepest silences. To imagine this void, picture a desert so wide that even light takes billions of years to cross it. Within that desert, a few lonely galaxies drift like islands in a soft, black sea. The Milky Way is one of them, our spiral arms turning gently within the hollow. Around us, the cosmic filaments form distant walls, glowing like mountain ranges beyond the horizon. Gravity from those denser regions tugs outward, pulling galaxies from the center toward the edges. The effect is slow, steady, and unstoppable. We are being drawn outward by the shape of nothingness itself. It is not an explosion. It is a quiet unfolding. In such places, physics behaves differently. Gravity, already the weakest of the fundamental forces, grows even weaker here. Without enough mass to pull things together, new structures cannot form. The void remains a void. Dark energy, the mysterious pressure that drives expansion, becomes dominant. It takes over the rhythm of this region, pushing space apart faster than average. The void swells like a cosmic bubble, expanding into the surrounding web of galaxies. The more it expands, the emptier it becomes. The emptier it becomes, the more it expands. This gentle loop of cause and effect has continued for billions of years, shaping the architecture of the universe in silence. If you could float beyond the Milky Way and look outward, you would not see a boundary, no wall or edge. The void is invisible to the eye, revealed only by the pattern of what is missing. Fewer galaxies, less light, longer shadows in the cosmic map. Yet its presence is undeniable. Light passing through it cools slightly, its wavelength stretched by the lack of gravitational pull. Astronomers see this as faint blue or red imprints on the cosmic microwave background, small temperature dips aligned perfectly with known voids. These are the fingerprints of emptiness. They show that space itself responds to the balance between matter and nothing. It is strange to think that absence has such influence, that the thinnest parts of the universe can shape our perception more than the dense ones. But nature has always woven opposites into its fabric. Expansion needs stillness. Light needs shadow. The cosmic web exists only because its hollows give it form. Every cluster of galaxies is defined by the spaces between. Without the voids, there would be no walls, no filaments, no structure at all. The universe is not a solid object, but a pattern of contrasts, the way music exists only through the pauses between notes. Living inside a cosmic void may sound lonely, but it also grants us a unique perspective. Here, where gravity relaxes and dark energy sings louder, we can observe how the universe behaves when freed from its usual density. We are in a natural observatory, a vast chamber where the laws of physics play in pure form. Perhaps this is why our era of astronomy is so rich. We happen to exist in the quietest corner of the cosmic web, where signals travel farther and the deep background hum can be heard more clearly. The void, in its own way, makes discovery possible. There is another quieter message hidden in this story. The universe, at its grandest scales, mirrors the inner landscape of thought. Just as galaxies cluster and drift apart, so too do ideas. There are dense regions of certainty, and there are wide open fields of not knowing. Most of existence lies in the latter. The void is not the opposite of creation, it is its condition. Only within emptiness can expansion occur. Only within silence can a new note be heard. To recognize that we live in a hollow is not to diminish our place, but to deepen it. The emptiness around us is not absence, but invitation. The scientists who first measured the KBC void did not seek poetry, they sought data. Yet what they uncovered feels profoundly human. It tells us that even in the grand machinery of physics, chance and stillness matter. That the largest structures in existence can arise from the simplest imbalance. And that our understanding, no matter how precise, is always shaped by where we stand. To measure the universe is to measure our own position within it. So tonight, as you listen, imagine yourself floating at the center of that enormous hollow. No up, no down, only the faint shimmer of distant galaxies. The light from those galaxies travels billions of years to reach you, crossing a desert of nearly perfect nothing. Each photon that touches your eye has passed through an ocean of silence to deliver a single piece of truth. The universe is larger than our knowing, yet delicate enough to cradle us within its emptiness. You are living inside a cosmic breath, expanding and contracting in harmony with all that is. And somewhere in that vast, invisible rhythm, the stars remember you. A void is never truly empty. When we imagine nothingness, we tend to think of a clean slate, a hollow beyond all substance. But the universe has no such thing. Even its silences hum. Even its darkness glows. What we call a cosmic void is simply a place where matter is thinner, where gravity softens, and the slow pressure of dark energy takes the lead. Within these immense hollows, galaxies do exist, but they are few, drifting like quiet embers across a vast sea. Between them stretch plains of near vacuum, where a single atom might wander for miles before meeting another. Yet even here, life of a different kind continues. Light still travels. Space still breathes. The emptiness itself is alive with quiet motion. The region around us, the KBC void, contains only about 15% of the average cosmic density. If you could take a cube of space from a denser region of the universe, you might find 10 galaxies inside it. In our void, the same cube might hold only one. That difference is everything. It changes how gravity behaves, how light bends, and how time itself flows. Inside such a place, gravity no longer dominates. There is not enough mass to weave strong threads of attraction. The invisible hand that binds stars into galaxies loosens its grip. The result is a landscape where expansion takes over. Dark energy, the mysterious force that pushes space apart, becomes the ruler here. Where gravity pulls inward, dark energy pushes outward, and in the emptiness of a void, there is nothing left to resist. Imagine a soap bubble floating in sunlight. Its thin surface expands as air fills it, while the surrounding air presses back with equal patience. The bubble's edge grows, its colors shift, and its shape remains fragile and perfect until it finally drifts away. A cosmic void behaves the same way. The more it grows, the thinner it becomes. The thinner it becomes, the faster it expands. This feedback creates a rhythm of slow acceleration that can last billions of years. The boundaries of the void move outward like ripples on a pond, while the filaments of galaxies surrounding it serve as gentle walls. These walls are not barriers but transitions, gradients where matter gathers again, forming clusters and superclusters, the denser continents of the cosmic ocean. For astronomers, voids are more than curiosities. They are laboratories, places where nature reveals how space behaves when stripped of its usual noise. In dense regions, gravity and collision dominate. Galaxies pull, crash, merge, and ignite. The equations are complicated, full of interference, but inside a void, the variables simplify. With gravity quieted, dark energy can be studied in near isolation. The acceleration of the void's growth becomes a clean measure of how that invisible pressure acts across space. Observing galaxies near the edges of voids, scientists notice that they move slightly faster than expected, rushing outward as if carried by an unseen tide. That tide is the geometry of nothingness itself. Matter outside the void pulls outward, stretching everything within. In a way, gravity in a void acts backward. Instead of drawing things in, it draws them out. If you could stand at the heart of this cosmic hollow, you would feel none of this motion. To you, everything would seem still. The galaxies would hold their slow positions, and the background of stars would remain serene. Yet in truth, the entire structure is expanding, its boundaries flowing away at unimaginable speeds. The paradox of the void is that stillness and motion coexist. What appears tranquil from within is, in fact, dynamic from without. The same is true of many things. A calm sea hides currents beneath its surface. A silent mind hides the movement of thought. The void, too, hides its flow behind the veil of stillness. Light traveling through such an environment changes in delicate ways. Without the usual web of gravitational wells to climb in and out of, photons lose less energy. They stretch less, cool slightly, and reach us with traces of their journey imprinted in color. When scientists map the faint microwave glow left from the Big Bang, they find subtle cool spots that correspond to the locations of large voids. These regions of slightly lower temperature are the shadows of emptiness. They remind us that even the absence of matter leaves fingerprints on the light that crosses it. Nothingness, it seems, has texture. Over time, the expansion of voids shapes the structure of the entire universe. They grow like bubbles in rising dough, pushing against one another until they fill almost all available space. The dense filaments that remain between them are like thin walls where the bubbles meet. These walls hold nearly all the galaxies, all the clusters, all the bright patterns we see through telescopes. The rest, the vast majority, is hollow. Nearly 90% of the universe's volume is composed of voids, and yet most of its mass lies in the remaining 10%. This imbalance defines the character of everything we observe. It tells us that the universe is not built from fullness, but from contrast. Matter and emptiness are partners in a dance that has no center. To understand the nature of a void is to understand how the universe breathes. Every pocket of low density expands faster than the average. Every pocket of high density resists. The cosmos is therefore a pattern of uneven rhythms, some regions rushing outward while others lag behind. When astronomers measure the average expansion rate, they are measuring the harmony between these opposing flows. The discovery that we live inside an especially large and thin region means our local rhythm is faster than the cosmic average. The song of our surroundings is pitched a little higher, stretched a little more. It changes how we hear the symphony of the universe. The same melody reaches us, but its tempo is subtly altered by where we stand. This realization opens a deeper question. Why does the universe create such vast hollows at all? The answer begins with gravity and randomness. In the early moments after the Big Bang, matter was nearly uniform, spread like mist. But tiny fluctuations existed, pockets where matter was slightly denser and pockets where it was slightly thinner. Gravity amplified these differences. The dense spots grew denser, pulling in more matter, while the thin spots lost what little they had. Over billions of years, this process sculpted the cosmic web. The dense threads became galaxies and clusters, and the thin threads became voids. Emptiness is not the opposite of creation. It is one of its outcomes. The universe could not have formed without these contrasts. Balance demands both the full and the hollow. Inside a void, the behavior of galaxies changes in subtle and beautiful ways. They tend to be smaller, more delicate, and slower to evolve. Deprived of nearby companions, they rarely collide or merge. Their spiral arms remain smooth, their structures intact. Star formation occurs at a leisurely pace. Some of them drift for eons before forming new suns. Others carry large reserves of unspent hydrogen, waiting for a spark that may never come. In these quiet conditions, galaxies age gracefully. They are like solitary trees growing in a wide plain, untouched by the winds of crowding. Observing them helps scientists understand how isolation affects cosmic evolution. It is as if the universe set aside these quiet corners as control experiments to see what happens when it removes the noise. Dark matter also behaves differently in such places. Though invisible, it still shapes the motion of everything we can see. In dense clusters, dark matter halos overlap and distort, tugged by neighboring masses. In voids, those halos remain round and pure. They are less disturbed, their gravitational fields cleaner. Studying them provides a clearer view of how this unseen substance behaves when left alone. The emptiness simplifies what is otherwise too tangled to untangle. Silence, once again, becomes clarity. Even dark energy reveals itself more openly inside these hollows. Because matter is scarce, there is little gravity to oppose the expansion it causes. Voids expand more rapidly, providing a direct window into how strong this mysterious force is. By measuring the rate of that expansion, astronomers can test whether dark energy is constant or changing over time. If the voids grow faster than predicted, it might mean that dark energy is evolving. Each hollow becomes a clock, a natural experiment written across billions of light years. The more we learn about voids, the more they guide us toward understanding the invisible forces shaping all existence. From another angle, the void invites philosophical reflection. We are used to thinking of emptiness as absence, as something missing. But in the language of the cosmos, emptiness is structure. Without it, the web could not exist. The galaxies owe their shape and position to the vast spaces between them. Every point of light depends on darkness to define it. In this sense, the void is a teacher. It shows that presence and absence are not opposites, but companions. The universe balances them effortlessly, never preferring one over the other. Perhaps the same lesson applies to our inner world. Between thoughts, between breaths, there are gaps of stillness that hold everything together. To fear them is to misunderstand their purpose. If one could travel across the boundary of our local void, the transition would be imperceptible at first. Space would seem no different. Yet slowly, the number of galaxies in view would increase. Gravity would begin to strengthen. Clusters would appear closer together, and the pull of dark energy would feel a little weaker. Beyond the edge lies the denser cosmic web, where the grand gatherings of matter dominate again. The journey from void to filament is the journey from solitude to community. Both are necessary. One provides expansion, the other containment. Together, they create the living fabric of the universe. Inside the KBC void, the Milky Way drifts not alone, but as part of a small family called the local group. Around 80 galaxies share this gentle region, orbiting one another in slow harmony. Farther out lies the Laniakea supercluster, an enormous collection of 100,000 galaxies, all flowing toward a gravitational basin known as the Great Attractor. And yet, even this immense structure sits within the larger void. The hierarchy of space continues endlessly. Voids contain smaller voids, and within them lie islands of matter that hold even tinier hollows. The pattern repeats like a whisper inside a whisper, showing that emptiness is not one thing, but many layers of stillness folded together. As we learn more about the nature of these voids, our understanding of cosmology changes. The standard model of the universe, built on the assumption of uniformity, begins to tremble at its edges. If our surroundings are so rare, then our observations may not represent the whole. The universe may not be as smooth as we believed. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Perspective matters. From one point of view, expansion looks fast. From another, it looks slow. From one scale, the universe appears full. From another, mostly empty. Truth in such a vast context is never singular. It flows like light through shifting glass, taking shape according to where it passes. In the quiet of the void, the boundaries between science and philosophy blur. The data speaks of gravitational gradients and density contrasts, but the experience of contemplating it feels almost spiritual. To know that we live inside such vast emptiness is to sense the fragility of everything and also its endurance. The galaxies continue their patient drift. Light still crosses the darkness. Expansion continues without haste or pause. There is a gentleness to this vision, a reassurance that motion and stillness can coexist. The void is not a mistake in creation, but one of its softest expressions. As you listen, imagine floating again in that immense hollow, surrounded by rare galaxies glowing faintly like lanterns on a misty shore. Between them stretches an ocean so transparent that it almost ceases to exist. You are part of that ocean, part of the slow expansion. part of the balance between gravity and release. The silence around you is not cold, it is steady. It asks for nothing and gives everything. In this state, knowledge and peace feel like the same thing. The universe grows not from noise, but from quiet understanding. The void teaches that the absence of matter is not the absence of meaning. It is the space where meaning has room to breathe. The universe is not a flat expanse of scattered stars. It is a living fabric woven from threads of light and darkness, a vast structure that stretches across unimaginable distances. When astronomers began to look deeper into the sky, they expected randomness, a quiet sea of galaxies spread evenly across space. What they found instead was a pattern, an intricate lacework where matter gathered in thin filaments and left behind enormous gaps. It was not chaos, but design, not uniformity, but rhythm. This discovery became known as the cosmic web, the grand architecture of existence, the skeleton of the universe itself. If you could rise far beyond the Milky Way and see the universe as a whole, you would not see a smooth ocean of galaxies. You would see clusters connected by faint glowing bridges, great filaments of matter stretching for hundreds of millions of light years, and between them, vast hollows of silence. It would look almost biological, like the network of neurons inside a living brain or the delicate veins of a leaf. Everywhere matter flows along invisible highways, gathering where paths intersect, leaving emptiness in between. This is the largest structure known to science, and yet it follows the simplest rule. Gravity pulls, emptiness expands, and together they create the pattern we see. For centuries, humanity saw the night sky as a dome of separate lights. Each star was a point, and the distances between them were unbridgeable. But in the 1970s, with the rise of redshift mapping, a new dimension opened. Scientists began to measure not only where galaxies appeared on the sky, but how far away they were. The result was startling. When plotted in 3 dimensions, galaxies did not fill space uniformly. They gathered in walls and chains, forming enormous filaments that curved and twisted like frozen rivers. Between those rivers lay deserts of nothingness, the cosmic voids. The universe, it turned out, was neither random nor even. It was structured like foam, with bright edges and dark interiors. This revelation changed cosmology. The first surveys, limited and rough, already hinted at the pattern, but as technology improved, the picture sharpened. The Sloan Digital Sky Survey in the early 2000s created vast 3-dimensional maps of millions of galaxies. When the data was rendered into form, scientists saw the true face of the cosmos. It resembled a web of glowing threads, connected and continuous, each intersection a knot of thousands of galaxies bound by gravity. The empty spaces between them were not errors, but essential features, vast caverns that defined the web's shape. The whole universe appeared as a single breathing organism, expanding yet held together by invisible bonds. At the largest scales, this web is the story of gravity itself. After the Big Bang, matter was almost perfectly even, but tiny ripples in density existed, seeds of future form. Gravity magnified those ripples. Regions slightly denser than average attracted more matter, growing into clusters. Regions slightly thinner became voids, losing their substance to the stronger neighborhoods. Over billions of years, this process sculpted the structure we see today. The filaments are the ridges of that ancient terrain, where matter flowed together like rivers of dust. The voids are the valleys, vast and quiet, where the currents slowed to stillness. The cosmic web is the frozen imprint of that long evolution. When we look at this structure, we see beauty, but we also see time. Every filament is a history of attraction, every cluster a chronicle of gravity's patience. Matter does not move quickly on such scales. It drifts over eons, gathering into walls 1 billion light-years long. The largest known filament, the Sloan Great Wall, spans nearly 1.5 billion light-years, a length beyond imagination. Light itself takes 1.5 billion years to travel from one end to the other. The scale humbles everything human. Our entire galaxy is a mere grain of dust clinging to one of these threads. And yet, within that grain, there are suns and worlds and minds capable of understanding it. The cosmic web also reveals the balance between matter and emptiness. Only about 10% of the universe's volume contains most of the mass. The other 90% is nearly void, occupied by traces of gas and dark matter too diffuse to gather. This imbalance might seem inefficient, but it is what allows complexity to exist. The contrast creates boundaries. The filaments form where gravity wins, and the voids form where expansion prevails. Between them lies a dynamic equilibrium, a rhythm of contraction and release. The universe is not static. It is an ongoing negotiation between density and absence, between the pull of what is and the invitation of what is not. The cosmic web mirrors patterns found throughout nature. When you look at the roots of a tree, the branches of a river delta, or the neural pathways of the human brain, you see echoes of the same geometry. It is as though the universe repeats itself at different scales, weaving similar forms from entirely different materials. The laws that guide gravity on cosmic scales are not the same as those that shape a leaf, yet the resulting patterns converge toward harmony. Complexity arises from simplicity, and the same rules that govern the motion of galaxies can also whisper through the growth of coral or the drift of clouds. Science calls this fractal behavior, a self-similarity that spans scales. Philosophy calls it unity, the deep coherence of creation. In the cosmic web, light follows these threads. Galaxies align along filaments like beads on invisible strings. When we look deep into space, we are not just seeing distance, we are seeing history. The light from a galaxy 10 billion light-years away began its journey before the Earth existed. It traveled through the expanding universe, crossing voids and filaments, bent gently by gravity. Each photon carries the memory of that path. The pattern of galaxies we observe today is therefore both a map of space and a record of time. It tells us how the universe grew from its infancy to its current vastness. Within these filaments, matter condenses further into clusters, superclusters, and the galaxies we can see with the naked eye. The intersections of filaments are the densest nodes, the meeting points of gravity's long pull. These are the cosmic cities, blazing with billions of suns. The Milky Way lies near one such intersection, part of a smaller chain within a grander structure called the Laniakea supercluster. Even this enormous formation is only a single branch of the larger web. Beyond it stretch other superclusters, other networks, until the scale dissolves into horizons we cannot yet reach. Between the threads, the voids stretch, silent and vast. These are not interruptions in the pattern, but its balance. Without them, the web would collapse under its own gravity. The emptiness provides the flexibility that keeps the structure alive. It allows expansion to continue while maintaining coherence. In that sense, the voids are the lungs of the universe, spaces that inhale and exhale the energy of existence. The filaments are the skeleton, the form. Together, they create the rhythm that defines cosmic time. Every structure, from atom to galaxy, participates in that rhythm. The cosmic web also provides insight into dark matter, the unseen substance that outweighs normal matter 5-1. Dark matter does not shine or absorb light, but it shapes everything. The filaments themselves are mostly made of dark matter, with galaxies forming along their densest cores like dew on a spider's thread. Without dark matter, there would be no web at all. Its gravity guided the flow of normal matter, drawing it into patterns while remaining invisible. When astronomers map the distribution of galaxies, they are actually tracing the hidden skeleton of dark matter. Light is simply the decoration on an unseen frame. The universe glows where the invisible has gathered strength. Studying the web allows scientists to test the deepest theories of physics. The pattern of filaments and voids encodes the fingerprints of the early universe. By measuring how matter clusters at different scales, cosmologists can infer how gravity and dark energy have evolved over time. The web serves as a cosmic archive, its structure shaped by both the expansion of space and the subtle tug of unseen forces. When models of the universe are run through computers, the best simulations reproduce the same web-like pattern. If the equations are correct, the filaments appear naturally. If they do not, the pattern dissolves. The beauty of the web thus confirms the truth of our physics. But beyond the mathematics lies something more intimate. To look upon the cosmic web is to see the universe as a single connected being. Every galaxy is linked to every other through chains of gravity. Every cluster tugs on its neighbors, no matter how far away. The structure is not random, but relational. Nothing exists alone. Even the most isolated star is part of this fabric. The light that leaves one corner eventually influences another. The web binds everything into a quiet communion of motion and distance. It is the physical embodiment of interdependence, the same principle that echoes through philosophy and spiritual thought. The universe, at its grandest, is a network of relationships, not objects. This realization softens the boundary between the scientific and the sacred. The web is both mechanism and metaphor. It explains the distribution of galaxies, but it also speaks to a deeper truth. That connection defines existence. The same pattern that shapes the heavens shapes the mind. Our neurons mirror the arrangement of galaxies, and our thoughts travel through those internal filaments of awareness, just as light travels through cosmic ones. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm, not in detail, but in essence. The universe is learning about itself through the structures it creates, from atoms to consciousness. Every filament, every cluster, every void is part of an ongoing story. The cosmic web is not static, it evolves. As the universe expands, the filaments stretch and thin. Gravity continues to pull matter into clusters, but dark energy drives everything apart. Over time, the web will become more fragile. The threads will elongate, the nodes will drift away from one another, and the visible connections will fade. Billions of years from now, distant galaxies will slip beyond our cosmic horizon, their light stretched until it disappears. The web will still exist, but it will become invisible to us. The universe will grow quieter, its once bright filaments dimming like embers at the edge of a dying fire. And yet, the pattern will remain written in the fabric of space. It will not vanish, only rest. Perhaps this is the destiny of all structure, to emerge, to shine, to disperse, and to wait. The cosmic web is both the past and the promise of the universe. It reminds us that order arises naturally from chaos, that connection emerges from emptiness, and that even the most fleeting moment participates in a design larger than itself. Science describes this design with equations, but the heart recognizes it as harmony. If you close your eyes and imagine the universe from afar, you might see it not as scattered galaxies, but as a luminous weave, pulsing gently in time with its own expansion. Each thread a story of gravity and light, each void a pause where silence gathers. You might see that everything, including you, belongs to this structure. The atoms in your body were once particles in those filaments, drifting through space long before the Earth formed. You are built from the same matter that traces the cosmic web, a living expression of the same forces. The universe is not out there, it is within you. The web is your origin, your inheritance, your reflection. To contemplate the cosmic web is to sense the vastness of existence without fear. It is to see that the universe is not empty but elegantly connected. It breathes through its filaments, hums through its voids, and glows through its galaxies. The pattern stretches beyond comprehension, yet it is simple in its essence. Light and darkness, attraction and release, form and stillness. In the grand design, every strand matters. Every motion contributes to the whole. And in the soft rhythm of expansion and gravity, the universe continues its silent conversation with itself. A dialogue written in stars and space, in light and quiet, forever unfolding. To live inside a cosmic void is to live inside a question. Everything we see, every measure we make, every distance we imagine is filtered through the hollow that surrounds us. The emptiness we inhabit bends perception as surely as glass bends light. From our quiet position near the center of this vast, underdense region, we look outward and believe we are seeing the universe as it is. But perhaps what we see is the echo of our location, the subtle curvature of perspective that arises from where we stand. It is one of the universe's gentlest illusions, a whisper reminding us that knowledge is never separate from position. The Milky Way, along with thousands of nearby galaxies, drifts within the KBC void, a region where matter is thinner than average by nearly 20%. That difference seems small, but across billions of light years it changes everything. Light passing through this region travels slightly faster, as if unburdened by gravity. Time itself flows a little differently. The density of matter shapes the fabric of space, and where there is less matter, space stretches more easily. That means distances appear longer, motion appears faster, and the expansion of the universe seems to accelerate. What we interpret as a global property of the cosmos might in part be a local effect of the hollow we live in. Our home may be the lens that shapes the image of reality. When astronomers measure how fast the universe expands, they use two main methods. One looks outward toward the most ancient light, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, known as the cosmic microwave background. That measurement gives a slower rate of expansion. The other looks inward, measuring nearby galaxies and the flicker of supernova. That one gives a faster rate. This conflict is called the Hubble tension, a quiet puzzle that has haunted cosmology for decades. Every attempt to solve it has led to new questions. Perhaps dark energy changes with time. Perhaps the laws of physics vary across space. Or perhaps, as some suspect, the tension arises because we live in an underdense region, and what we see is the artifact of our void's expansion. In a void, gravity's pull is weaker, and the surrounding denser regions tug outward on everything inside. Galaxies within the hollow drift away from each other slightly faster than those in average space. To an observer within the void, it looks as if the universe itself is expanding faster. But the truth is local. It is not that space everywhere expands at this pace, but that our neighborhood does. If we could measure from the other side of the cosmic web, we might find a slower rhythm. The cosmos is not a single metronome ticking evenly across infinity. It is a symphony of local tempos, each shaped by its density, each contributing to the grand, uneven harmony of existence. This realization carries a quiet humility. For centuries, science has sought to remove humanity from the center. We learned that Earth is not the center of the solar system, that the sun is not the center of the galaxy, and that our galaxy is not the center of the universe. Yet here we are again, in a position that is not central but still unusual. We dwell in one of the rarest hollows known, a cosmic basin of silence. It does not make us special, but it does make us aware. The universe has no true center, and yet every observer, wherever they stand, feels as though the expansion radiates outward from them. The lesson is not about privilege, but about perception. Every point in an expanding universe is both center and edge. Every perspective is true within its own frame. The KBC void challenges the principle of cosmic uniformity. The idea that on the largest scales, the universe should look the same everywhere. For decades, this principle has been the foundation of cosmology. It allowed scientists to model the universe as a smooth whole, predictable and symmetric. The discovery of such a large, underdense region bends that foundation without breaking it. The universe remains mostly uniform, but it also holds local stories, regional variations in density and motion that add texture to the grand picture. Our void is one such story, a vast chapter of calm within the book of creation. Inside the void, our measurements of distance are subtly distorted. Light from distant galaxies stretches as it travels through the expanding emptiness, its wavelength lengthening like a sigh. The redshift we observe becomes slightly exaggerated, giving the impression that those galaxies are moving away faster than they are. The deeper the void, the stronger the illusion. Even the cosmic microwave background, the oldest light in existence, reaches us through this lens. Its pattern of temperature fluctuations carries the fingerprint of our position, a faint asymmetry that reveals we are not perfectly average observers. We are participants in the story we tell, woven into the very field we study. This interplay between perception and position echoes a truth beyond physics. In every form of understanding, from science to introspection, we see through the lens of where we stand. Perspective shapes truth, not by distortion, but by context. To recognize that is to find peace with uncertainty. The universe does not hide itself. It simply allows multiple versions of itself to exist, each valid from its own location. The same principle that governs light in space also governs awareness in mind. We cannot step outside of perspective, but we can learn to see its shape, to honor its limits and its beauty. The Milky Way's motion within the void offers another quiet paradox. Our galaxy moves at nearly 600,000 miles per hour relative to the background of the universe. Yet from our point of view, the cosmos seems to move around us. The flow of galaxies, the tilt of expansion, all appear to shift in relation to our path. But motion in the universe is always relative. There is no stillness, no fixed anchor. Everything drifts within everything else. The center of the void is not a point in space. It is wherever the observer happens to be. When we measure the universe, we measure it from a moving vessel, carried by the same current we seek to chart. It is like studying the ocean from within a wave. To some, this relativity may seem unsettling. It undermines the idea of objective truth, of a single cosmic story told from nowhere. But the universe is not a machine built from absolutes. It is a living continuum of relationships. The deeper one looks, the more connections emerge, and the less sense it makes to speak of separation. Even the void is not truly empty. It is filled with gravitational whispers from beyond its borders, with light crossing from distant clusters, with the unseen scaffolding of dark matter. Everything is connected to everything else, though the lines of connection may be invisible. The bias of our position is not a flaw, but a reminder that all knowledge is relational. To know the universe is to be part of it. Astronomers have tried to model how much the void affects what we see. Some simulations suggest that living in a region 20% less dense than average could explain part of the Hubble tension, though perhaps not all of it. Others find that even a small deviation can ripple across vast distances, altering the flow of light in subtle ways. The precise effect remains uncertain, but the philosophical one is clear. The universe is not uniform in its behavior, and our location shapes what we believe to be true. To measure expansion from a void is to listen to a quiet place and mistake its silence for speed. The stiller the surroundings, the louder the movement seems. Light itself behaves like a messenger between realities. As it crosses the void, it carries information from denser regions, but that information is filtered through our hollow. The brightness of distant objects, the way their light stretches, even the apparent age of the universe, all are affected by the path that light takes. The emptiness we live in lengthens those paths, diluting their brightness. It is a gentle distortion, not enough to deceive, but enough to remind us that truth is layered. The universe does not lie, but it speaks in accents shaped by where it is heard. There is a deep beauty in this imperfection. If the cosmos were perfectly uniform, there would be no story, no variation, no texture. The voids and filaments, the dense clusters and hollow spaces, all contribute to the living design. Our position within a void gives us a unique window, allowing us to observe expansion more clearly than we could from a crowded region. The emptiness around us is not a flaw, but an opportunity, a quiet vantage from which to see the larger rhythm. The same principle holds in life. Solitude often reveals what noise conceals. Stillness is not absence, but clarity. When we realize that our understanding is shaped by our position, humility follows naturally. We begin to see that knowledge is not conquest, but collaboration. Every measurement is a conversation between the observer and the observed, a dialogue across the fabric of space. The void does not isolate us. It connects us to the rest of the universe through the very act of observation. Our instruments, our telescopes, our equations, all of them are extensions of curiosity reaching into the quiet around us. To live in the void is to live in a space designed for reflection, both literal and metaphorical. Scientists often describe the universe as isotropic, meaning it looks the same in every direction, but within the void, that symmetry is delicate. Tiny gradients in density create slight differences in the cosmic background. Some regions appear a fraction warmer or cooler, closer or farther. These differences are minute, yet they reveal the complexity of the cosmos. Uniformity, like balance, is never absolute. It is a dynamic equilibrium, always adjusting, always breathing. The same can be said of our inner lives. No person stands perfectly centered. Each of us lives within our own void of experience, seeing the world through the lens of our particular gravity. Understanding this does not diminish truth. It deepens compassion. If we could step outside the void and look back, we might see our region as a soft depression in the larger web, a gentle dip surrounded by walls of galaxies. The boundaries of that depression glow faintly where matter gathers more thickly. It would resemble a vast cosmic bowl, its floor almost smooth, its edges alive with stars. From that vantage, we would see our galaxy drifting near the center, carried slowly outward by the expansion. The view would be serene, almost tranquil, like looking into the heart of a cosmic lake. And within that lake, light from countless worlds would shimmer, crossing the silence to reach us. Our position within the void also influences how we think about beginnings and endings. If space can differ from place to place, then perhaps time does too. The age of the universe, as measured from here, may not be identical to what another observer would measure from a denser region. Time flows slightly faster in emptiness, where gravity is weak. It is as though the void gives us a glimpse of the universe's future, a preview of the expansion that awaits all regions as they thin and cool. To live in a void is to live ahead of the average pace, to witness the universe in a quieter, more advanced stage of its unfolding. The awareness of our bias is not a flaw in science, but one of its quiet victories. To discover that we see differently because of where we are is to grow in understanding. It means that knowledge is alive, capable of self-correction. The universe allows us to discover not only what it is, but how we look at it. That capacity for reflection is itself a form of cosmic intelligence. The universe observing itself through our eyes and learning its own shape. Every realization about perspective, every refinement of understanding, brings us closer to harmony with what is. Perhaps the truest lesson of the void is not scientific, but existential. To know that our vision of the cosmos is shaped by emptiness is to accept that all vision is partial, all truth situated. The goal is not to escape perspective, but to embrace it gently, to listen to the silence it carries. The bias of our position becomes a mirror, showing us the limits of certainty and the beauty of relativity. We are not separate from the universe we study. We are threads in its fabric, measuring the pattern from within. What we call observation is simply participation, and so we continue to drift through the hollow, carried by the quiet expansion of space. Around us, galaxies move outward like lanterns on a dark river. Their light reaches us, slightly bent, slightly delayed, but still true. Each photon carries both distance and intimacy, a message from the edge of time to the center of our awareness. The void we live in is not emptiness, but context, not absence, but atmosphere. It shapes how we see, how we think, how we feel the universe around us. To dwell within it is to inhabit a kind of cosmic mindfulness, an awareness of connection and limitation intertwined. the universe expands, and so does our understanding, each shaped by where it begins. In the beginning, before galaxies, before stars, before even the faintest trace of light, the universe was a smooth sea of possibility. There were no shapes, no edges, no centers, only a vast, quiet field of energy cooling as it expanded. And yet, within that stillness, there were ripples. Tiny fluctuations, smaller than atoms, flickered in the first moments after creation. These slight differences in density would one day grow into everything that exists. Where the ripples were thick, galaxies would bloom. Where they were thin, emptiness would stretch. The voids were born in that first breath, not as mistakes, but as natural pauses in the rhythm of creation. Those early ripples came from quantum fluctuations, the restless tremors of energy that cannot be perfectly still. Even the vacuum of space hums with potential, a soft vibration that never fades. When the universe inflated in its first instant, these quantum ripples expanded too, magnified from the tiniest scales to cosmic proportions. They became the seeds of structure, the invisible map that guided matter as it cooled and condensed. Gravity began to sculpt those seeds, pulling denser regions into clusters, while letting the thinner ones relax into calm. The result, billions of years later, is the cosmic landscape we see today. Webs of light and gulfs of darkness, both descended from the same primordial breath. The origins of the void, therefore, lie not in absence but in abundance. The universe was so full of motion that it had to form spaces where that motion could unfold. Imagine the surface of a pond, trembling after a pebble drops in. Waves form and interfere, some crests rising higher, some valleys sinking deeper. The cosmic voids are those deep valleys, frozen in time. They are not errors or empty gaps, but the negative space that gives shape to the whole. Just as silence defines a melody, emptiness defines the universe's design. As matter cooled and atoms formed, the first light of the cosmos emerged, the cosmic microwave background. It still surrounds us today, a faint glow bathing every corner of existence. Within that glow are faint imprints of the original ripples, subtle variations in temperature and density that trace the first outlines of the cosmic web. The voids we inhabit were already written in those patterns, though it would take billions of years for them to grow into their current size. Gravity, slow and steady, sculpted their edges. Dark energy, patient and invisible, stretched them wider. The universe was, from the very start, a balance between gathering and release. The scale of these early fluctuations was astonishingly small, 1 part in 100,000, a tiny excess of matter in one place, a tiny deficit in another. And yet those small differences decided the fate of everything. Where there was slightly more matter, stars would ignite. Where there was slightly less, a void would remain. The universe magnified its own imperfections into structure. It turned small unevenness into beauty. This principle lies at the heart of both science and philosophy, that complexity arises not from perfection, but from variation. A perfectly uniform universe would be static, featureless, lifeless. It is the imbalance that makes creation possible. As time passed, the first stars were born in the densest knots of gas. Their light illuminated the surrounding space, ionizing hydrogen and marking the end of cosmic darkness. Gravity continued to draw matter together, forming galaxies and clusters. Between these islands of brightness, the voids deepened. Their interiors became regions of slow motion, where expansion outpaced attraction. The contrast between density and emptiness sharpened like the contrast between mountains and seas. The universe grew both more structured and more spacious, its design stretching in every direction. Simulations of cosmic evolution show how the voids emerged naturally from those first conditions. When scientists model the expansion of space using the laws of physics, the same patterns appear: filaments of matter surrounding vast hollows. The details may vary, but the structure repeats. The voids grow larger over time, not because new emptiness is created, but because matter continues to flow outward toward denser regions. Gravity pulls where it is strongest, leaving behind regions that become thinner and quieter. It is a cosmic act of separation, gentle but inexorable. The universe shapes itself through contrast, carving beauty out of balance. The void we live in, the KBC region, may have begun as a small underdensity in the early universe. Over billions of years, it expanded faster than its surroundings, becoming a vast bubble nearly 2 billion light-years wide. Inside it, galaxies formed more sparsely, like stars reflected in shallow water. Around its edges, matter gathered into filaments and superclusters, the walls of the bubble. It is one of many such hollows scattered throughout the cosmos, though ours is among the largest known. Its existence is a reminder that even the grandest patterns arise from small beginnings. To trace the origin of the void is to revisit the birth of gravity itself. In the first moments after the Big Bang, gravity emerged as space cooled, breaking away from the unified forces of the early universe. From that instant, it began shaping the future, drawing energy into form. The same gentle pull that keeps your feet on the ground also guides galaxies across billions of light years. It is gravity that carved the voids, just as it built the stars. Yet gravity alone does not explain everything. Alongside it works another, quieter influence: dark energy, the pressure that pushes space apart. Where gravity gathers, dark energy expands. Their interplay creates the breathing motion of the cosmos, a balance of contraction and release that defines the shape of time. Every void, then, is a kind of exhale, a cosmic breath where expansion momentarily wins. The filaments and clusters are the inhales, the moments of gathering. Together, they form the universe's rhythm. This breathing is not metaphorical, but measurable. The rate of expansion changes with time, responding to the proportions of matter and dark energy. As the universe ages and becomes thinner, the exhalation grows stronger, the voids swell faster, and the filaments stretch farther apart. We are living in an era when the universe is exhaling deeply, releasing its structures into the vastness. Philosophically, this rhythm mirrors the patterns of life. Every living thing oscillates between gathering and letting go, between formation and dissolution. The cosmos follows the same law, though on scales so vast we can only glimpse its edges. The origin of the voids reminds us that emptiness is not an accident, but a stage of the process. It is the pause between movements, the quiet in which creation takes a breath before continuing. To live in such a moment is to live in balance between what was and what will be. As the universe expanded, dark matter played the hidden role of architect. It does not emit light, but it outweighs normal matter by a factor of 5. Its gravity guided the flow of gas and stars, defining the pattern of filaments and voids. In simulations, dark matter forms the scaffolding of the cosmic web, a ghostly network that holds everything together. The visible galaxies are merely the bright frosting on this invisible structure. Where dark matter was dense, galaxies clustered. Where it was thin, voids appeared. Even now, the emptiest regions contain strands of dark matter so faint that only their gravitational influence reveals them. The universe's architecture began in the dark and remains anchored there. When we look at the early universe, we see it as it was only a few 100,000 years after its birth. The light from that epoch has been stretched by expansion, its wavelengths lengthened into microwaves. Yet within that faint glow, we can read the entire future. The temperature differences recorded in the cosmic microwave background predict exactly how large the voids and filaments would become. It is as if the whole story was written in the first sentence, waiting to unfold through time. The origins of the voids are not random. They are the natural unfolding of a pattern born with the universe itself. There is a quiet symmetry in the fact that the largest structures in existence come from the smallest fluctuations imaginable. A difference of 1 part in 100,000 in the density of the early universe led to the formation of superclusters 1 billion light-years wide. The scale difference is almost beyond comprehension, and yet the principle is simple. Tiny causes, given time, create vast effects. In human terms, this reflects the truth that small moments can shape entire lives, that subtle choices ripple outward into generations. The universe speaks in the language of patience. It builds eternity from whispers. Over billions of years, the voids have not remained still. They continue to evolve, merging and stretching as the cosmic web expands. Smaller voids fall into larger ones, like bubbles joining in water. The boundaries between them blur, creating ever wider regions of calm. In this way, the universe smooths itself over time. The dense regions become denser, the empty ones emptier. The contrast sharpens, yet the pattern remains the same. The voids are not static absences, but living fields of motion, expanding quietly as the cosmos matures. Our understanding of these origins deepens with every new observation. Telescopes, like the James Webb Space Telescope, peer farther into the past, revealing galaxies from the universe's earliest days. Their distribution confirms what theory predicts, that structure began forming almost immediately after the first light. The same laws that shape the present were already at work in the beginning. Gravity's pull, dark energies push, and the dance between them created both the fullness and the emptiness we now observe. The story of the void is not separate from the story of creation. It is one of its first chapters. The most profound aspect of this story is how naturally it bridges science and contemplation. To study the origins of the void is to glimpse the simplicity behind complexity, the order within chaos. The universe did not need direction to become beautiful. It followed its own inherent rhythm, guided by laws that are both precise and poetic. The same equations that predict galaxy formation also describe the spreading of a ripple on a pond or the growth of a cloud in the sky. The universe does not distinguish between the grand and the small. Its creativity is consistent across scales. In the origins of the void, we find a mirror for our own beginnings. Just as the universe arose from a smooth field punctuated by fluctuations, so too do we emerge from silence interrupted by thought, from stillness disturbed by breath. Our lives, like galaxies, grow from unevenness. Our stories, like the voids, unfold through contrasts. It is not the uniform moments that define us, but the variations, the departures from balance that create pattern and meaning. The universe's first ripples are the ancestors of both structure and awareness. When you think of the void, Do not imagine nothing. Imagine potential. The emptiness that stretches between galaxies is not a lack, but a readiness, a canvas on which light can travel freely. It is the space that allows everything else to exist. Without it, there would be no room for motion, no distance for light to cross, no separation for contrast to appear. The origin of the void is therefore the origin of possibility itself. The universe began not with fullness, but with openness. It began with the capacity to hold. Even now, billions of years later, that openness continues to expand. The voids grow, and within their expansion, galaxies drift farther apart. One day, distant civilizations, if any remain, will see only their own galaxies, the rest of the universe hidden beyond reach. The early web of light will have stretched into invisibility, yet the structure will still exist, silent and immense, the echo of the universe's first ripple. The voids will be the memory of creation, the lingering breath of its beginning. To contemplate their origin is to feel time unfold like a wave, each moment carrying traces of the first. The voids remind us that everything vast begins small, that everything present was once potential. The same gentle fluctuations that formed them also formed us, for the atoms in our bodies were forged in stars that gathered within those ancient ripples. We are the continuation of the universe's uneven beginning, the living expression of its imperfections turned to form. To understand the origins of the void is to recognize our place in that lineage of wonder. And so, the story of the void's birth is the story of the universe learning to breathe. From quantum tremors to galaxies, from silence to song, it follows one unbroken line of evolution. The hollows that cradle us today are the direct descendants of the first fluctuations in the newborn cosmos. They are not gaps in creation, but pauses in its melody. Every void carries the memory of that first expansion, the echo of a time when everything was possible and nothing yet decided. When you look into the night sky and see the spaces between stars, you are looking into the oldest part of existence, the very silence from which all things began. In the quietest parts of the universe, far from the crowded clusters of galaxies and the restless light of collisions, there are lonely worlds drifting in peace. Inside the great cosmic voids, where space stretches wide and time moves unhurried, a different kind of existence unfolds. Galaxies here are few, scattered like faint lanterns across an endless ocean. They live slower, gentler lives than their counterparts in denser regions. Their stars burn more softly, their shapes remain smooth, and their stories unfold in the rhythm of patience. These are the galaxies of solitude, the dwellers of the cosmic desert, living proof that stillness too can nurture creation. If you could float inside one of these void galaxies and look outward, the sky would seem strangely empty. The nearest neighbors would shimmer faintly at immense distances, each separated by millions of light years. There would be no great clusters glowing on the horizon, no rush of galaxies colliding and merging. Instead, there would be space, vast and silent, where the hum of cosmic radiation fills the gaps between starlight. It is not lifelessness, but calm. The same physics applies here as everywhere else, but the tempo changes. Gravity's pull is weaker, the pace of evolution slower. The universe breathes more gently in its empty places. Scientists who study these isolated galaxies call them void galaxies. They are often smaller and less massive than those in dense clusters. Many are graceful spirals, their arms intact, unbroken by tidal forces. In crowded environments, galaxies frequently crash together, distorting each other's shapes and igniting bursts of new stars. In the void, collisions are rare. There is room to drift, room to remain. These galaxies are like ancient trees growing undisturbed in a vast plain, shaped only by the slow wind of time. Their stars live longer, their structures endure. They are not frozen, but tranquil, evolving at a pace that mirrors the silence surrounding them. One might imagine that such isolation leads to stagnation, but the opposite is true. The galaxies of the void reveal the subtlety of cosmic growth. They show how gravity, even when faint, continues its patient work. Gas clouds within them collapse to form new stars, though fewer and farther between. Some of these galaxies experience quiet bursts of creation, sudden waves of star formation that flicker and fade like campfires in the night. These bursts may be triggered by faint flows of intergalactic gas drifting through the void, the gentle exchanges that connect even the most distant realms. In such moments, light returns to darkness, proof that even isolation cannot escape the cycle of renewal. Within these galaxies, the chemistry of existence also differs. The lack of collisions means fewer supernovae, and thus fewer heavy elements scattered into space. Their gas remains relatively pristine, close to what it was in the early universe. Studying them gives astronomers a glimpse into cosmic history, a look at how galaxies might have evolved when the universe was young and unshaped by violence. They are natural archives, preserving the simplicity of the beginning. In their slow rotation and delicate glow, one can almost hear the echo of the first galaxies forming billions of years ago. Dark matter, invisible but ever-present, holds these isolated systems together. In the emptiness of the void, its role becomes even clearer. The halos of dark matter surrounding each galaxy provide the gravitational glue that keeps them intact. Without this unseen structure, the galaxies would disperse into the vacuum, their stars drifting apart like scattered dust. Yet here, protected by the quiet strength of dark matter, they endure. In some sense, the void's galaxies are the purest expression of the universe's architecture, stripped of distractions, guided only by the essential forces that shape all existence. The void itself influences their fate. Expansion is faster here, and the space between galaxies widens with each passing billion years. Over time, the already vast distances grow almost insurmountable. Communication between galaxies, through light or gravity, becomes weaker. Each system becomes a self-contained world, an island in the dark. Yet even in this solitude, there is connection. Gravity never fully disappears, and the faint pull of surrounding structures still whispers across the gulf. The galaxies feel each other's presence through subtle tides, invisible yet enduring. Nothing in the universe is ever truly alone. To understand life inside a cosmic void is to see contrast in its most refined form. In the dense regions of the universe, chaos and creation intertwine. Galaxies merge, stars explode, black holes feed on surrounding matter. Energy and transformation dominate. In the void, the same laws apply, but at a different cadence. Change happens quietly, almost imperceptibly. The silence of the void is not a lack of motion, but a slower rhythm. It teaches that creation does not always require turbulence. Growth can come from stillness, expansion from calm. The cosmos breathes in many tempos, and the void's tempo is one of contemplation. Astronomers find that galaxies and voids often have higher proportions of gas relative to their size. This gas is the raw material for new stars, meaning that even now, billions of years after the first galaxies formed, the void's inhabitants still carry the potential for renewal. They are not relics of the past, but active participants in the universe's ongoing evolution. Their isolation gives them longevity, while galaxies and clusters burn through their fuel quickly through frequent collisions. The void galaxies conserve theirs. They are the slow, steady candles of the cosmos, glowing quietly while others flare and fade. From a philosophical view, the void is a teacher of endurance and simplicity. It shows that life and structure do not vanish in silence. They adapt to it. The galaxies within these vast hollows are metaphors for resilience. They do not resist their isolation. They bloom within it. Their light, faint but persistent, reminds us that existence thrives, even in places where nothing seems to happen. The universe does not require fullness to be complete. Its beauty lies as much in its quiet spaces as in its crowded ones. The void's galaxies are not excluded from creation. They are the pause between the louder notes, the rest that gives music its form. Observing these galaxies requires sensitivity. Their light is faint, and their distances immense. Yet modern telescopes can capture them, revealing delicate spirals glowing softly against the black. Each image is a meditation on time. The light we see today began its journey hundreds of millions of years ago, crossing the empty gulf to reach us. It has traveled through near-perfect vacuum, untouched by dust or distortion. When it arrives, it carries not just information, but peace. It tells of a universe vast enough to contain both violence and stillness, both storm and calm, and to find harmony in their coexistence. The void's emptiness also shapes how energy moves through space. Without nearby galaxies to absorb or scatter light, radiation travels freely, fading slowly into infinity. Cosmic rays drift for ages before encountering matter. This openness makes the voids some of the most transparent regions of the universe. They are windows into cosmic background light, the diffuse glow of all stars and galaxies combined. Through these windows, scientists study the faint echoes of the early universe, unfiltered and pure. The void becomes both subject and instrument, a natural observatory for those who listen to silence. As we explore deeper into the void, we begin to notice that its boundaries are not sharp. They blur into filaments, thin streams of galaxies connecting one empty region to another. These filaments act like threads, stitching the cosmic fabric together. Even the loneliest galaxy is connected by these threads, bound to the larger web by invisible lines of gravity and gas. The void is therefore not isolation, but balance. It holds the tension between separation and connection, between solitude and belonging. It is emptiness that still participates in the whole. Inside such a vast quiet, time feels different. Without the rush of collisions or the blaze of nearby supernovae, the rhythm of change stretches. Galaxies evolve on scales so long that a single rotation can take hundreds of millions of years. Stars are born, live, and die in slow procession. Black holes at their centers grow not by feasting, but by waiting, gathering the rare gas that drifts near. This patience gives the void its character. It is not empty, but eternal, not static, but serene. The same laws of thermodynamics that govern explosions also govern stillness. Both are expressions of energy-seeking balance. For humanity, the existence of such regions invites reflection. We live in a universe that holds both intensity and silence, and both are necessary. Our galaxy, though not in the deepest part of the void, still feels its influence. We are surrounded by spaciousness. Perhaps this is why we can see so far, why the night sky offers such clarity. The void gives us perspective, a seat at the edge of infinity, from which to observe creation's full range. It allows us to witness both the crowded and the calm, both the loud birth of stars and the quiet drift of galaxies. The emptiness around us is the canvas that makes the stars visible. In a sense, the void galaxies live as the universe itself will one day live. As expansion continues and dark energy grows dominant, all regions will eventually resemble the void. Galaxies will drift apart until their light can no longer bridge the gaps. The universe will become a grand solitude, each island of stars enclosed in its own horizon. What we see in the void today is a preview of that distant future, a glimpse of what cosmic peace will look like when motion slows and distances widen beyond communication. It is the universe's end written softly into its present. And yet, even in that future, life in some form may persist. The galaxies of the void show that endurance is woven into the cosmos. Where conditions seem too thin for creation, it continues. Where silence seems total, there is still a pulse. These quiet galaxies remind us that existence does not depend on abundance. It depends on continuity, on the simple act of being. The void sustains that being through calm, through space enough to allow evolution to proceed unhindered. In that way, emptiness becomes nourishment. If one listens to the story of the void carefully, it speaks of balance, of how creation is distributed through contrast. It tells us that density alone is not destiny, that even the thinnest regions carry potential. It invites us to look at our own lives with the same understanding. In moments of solitude, in times when everything seems distant, the same principle applies. Stillness is not failure. It is the environment where quiet forms of growth take root. The galaxies of the void are proof of that truth, written across light years. Imagine standing on a planet inside one of those lonely galaxies. The night sky would shimmer with only a handful of bright stars. Beyond them, faint smudges of distant galaxies would hang like memories of another world. The air of that place might feel sacred, filled with the weight of space itself. You would sense the vastness pressing gently in all directions, not as threat, but as embrace. The silence would be profound, yet not empty. It would carry the hum of cosmic radiation, the same faint whisper that has sounded since the dawn of time. In that quiet, you would realize that existence, at its deepest level, is peaceful. The galaxies of the void do not struggle against their solitude. They accept it as their nature, and in doing so, they endure. They are teachers of cosmic patience, showing that longevity and calm often walk together. Their light, faint but steady, continues to travel across the darkness, reaching us after eons to remind us of this truth. The universe, in all its vastness, makes room for every kind of being, from the crowded clusters to the lonely wanderers. Each has its place in the grand balance. The void, in its quiet way, completes the picture. It shows that the absence of noise does not mean the absence of life, and that sometimes, in the deepest silence, the universe speaks most clearly. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the universe listens to itself. It hums through distances too vast to measure, through silences too deep to name. The light of a billion suns drifts across that silence, carrying with it the memory of beginnings. And inside one of those soft hollows of space, we drift. We are not at the center of anything, yet we are surrounded by everything. The vastness does not exclude us, it includes us entirely. To live within this cosmic void is to live within the heart of the universe's stillness. Every moment is a conversation between what exists and what allows existence to unfold. The meaning of the void is not hidden in its emptiness, but in its balance. It is a space where the universe shows that presence and absence are equal parts of the same design. The galaxies along its edges shine because the space between them gives them room to glow. The silence of the void amplifies their music. What appears as isolation is, in truth, participation in a greater harmony. Every beam of light that crosses this darkness completes the pattern, reminding us that emptiness is never nothing. It is the pause that allows motion, the quiet that makes meaning audible. Science speaks of the void in measurements and probabilities, in densities and rates of expansion. It tells us that we live in a region of low matter, that our perception of cosmic speed and time is shaped by this hollowness. But beyond the numbers lies something the heart can feel. The void is not only a structure of physics, it is a mirror of perception. It teaches that truth is contextual, that understanding always depends on where we stand. From within a hollow, we see the universe expanding faster. From within solitude, we often sense life more deeply. The patterns of matter and mind overlap. The cosmos and consciousness both breathe through their empty spaces. The universe is a grand paradox of fullness and silence. It creates by contrasting the two. The densest clusters of galaxies blaze with violence, birthing stars and black holes. The emptiest voids expand gently, preserving peace. Both are necessary. The cosmos needs its quiet as much as its fire. Without the calm of the void, the bright regions would have nowhere to grow. Without stillness, there would be no form. This rhythm echoes through all scales, from galaxies to thoughts. Every creation requires a pause. Every sound needs silence to be heard. In this way, the universe and awareness share the same architecture. The presence of the void also carries a quiet message about humility. Humanity has always sought its place in the cosmos, moving from one understanding to another. First we believed we were at the center, then we learned we were not. Now we discover that we live inside an immense hollow, a region of lesser matter than the rest. At first, that might feel like cosmic irony, as if the universe had placed us in its quietest corner. But perhaps that is exactly where consciousness was meant to arise. In a place of calm, perception has room to unfold. In a universe of tension and balance, awareness blooms where stillness is strongest. The void may not be an accident. It may be the cradle of understanding. If we look at it this way, the universe becomes less a mechanism and more a meditation. Every structure, every galaxy, every field of gravity contributes to the great act of reflection. The voids are the universe pausing to observe itself. Their vast silence is not lifelessness, but attention. Through them, light travels freely, crossing billions of years to deliver information, to weave memory into space. Our telescopes catch that light, and in doing so, we participate in the same act of awareness. The universe looks at itself through our eyes. The distance between matter and mind narrows until they seem like different expressions of the same unfolding. As science continues to explore the voids, new mysteries arise. Observations show that the galaxies within them still evolve, that star formation continues quietly even where matter is scarce. The void is not static. It grows, it changes, it breathes. Its expansion is faster than the average, as if space itself finds more freedom there. The edges of the void pull outward, creating gentle flows of matter that shape the surrounding cosmic web. Even emptiness has gravity. Even stillness moves. To recognize this is to understand that nothing in the universe is truly inert. Every particle, every region, participates in the same ongoing expansion. The void is not the absence of life. It is the presence of motion too subtle to see. When we reflect on our place within this vast structure, a soft truth emerges. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are the cosmos reflecting. The atoms in our bodies were forged in stars that once hung on the walls of the void. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, the carbon in our cells, all began as fragments of cosmic fire drifting through emptiness before gathering into form. We are both the light and the silence that holds it. The same expansion that carries galaxies apart carries our thoughts forward. The same gravity that bends starlight binds our hearts to one another. The void outside is mirrored within. In this light, the universe is not cold. It is contemplative. It unfolds with patience, allowing billions of years for complexity to arise. It does not rush. It trusts the rhythm of its own breath. The galaxies that drift through the void are like thoughts moving through a mind that never stops expanding. They are not lost. They are exploring. Every motion, every orbit, every flicker of starlight is part of a greater intelligence, the quiet intelligence of being. And we, by existing within it, become its witness. To look into the void is to look into the mirror of time itself. Some may wonder what purpose this knowledge serves. To know that we live inside a cosmic hollow might seem abstract, distant from daily life. But the lessons of the void reach inward. They remind us to embrace space, to honor quiet, to see value in stillness. In a world that often equates movement with progress, the void teaches another kind of wisdom. That expansion can happen without noise, that presence can grow from emptiness. The galaxies inside these hollows do not compete. They drift, adapt, and shine in their own rhythm. They embody a serenity the universe has known since its birth. If the cosmos teaches through pattern, then the void teaches acceptance. It shows that the absence of something is also the presence of something else. Where matter is scarce, space flourishes. Where sound ends, silence begins. The universe wastes nothing. Every gap serves purpose. Every emptiness completes the whole. This truth softens the human desire for certainty. It allows us to rest in mystery without fear. We are not here to solve the universe, but to experience it. Understanding is not a conclusion, but a relationship, and the void invites us into that relationship with grace. As we travel mentally through this vast hollow, we can imagine the future of all things. The universe will keep expanding. The filaments of galaxies will stretch thinner, and the voids will widen. Eventually, the night sky will empty. Distant galaxies will move beyond the horizon of light, invisible to any future eyes. The stars will fade, and space will grow silent again. This is not tragedy, but transformation. The universe will return to quiet, completing its cycle. It will rest in the same calm that began it, a stillness vast enough to hold every story ever told. In that final silence, the echoes of creation will remain, folded gently into the fabric of space. Our moment exists within this grand continuum. We live in a fleeting phase between beginnings and endings, between contraction and release. We are the consciousness of the universe, becoming aware of its own breath. To realize this is to feel both small and infinite. The same emptiness that surrounds us also lives within us, creating the space where thought and feeling arise. The same light that crosses the void illuminates our minds. The same balance that governs galaxies guides the rhythm of our own hearts. There is no separation between cosmic and human. Both are expressions of one unfolding field of existence. When we look up at the night sky, we are not looking outward but inward. The stars we see are the surface of our own origins, reminders of what we are made of and what we are returning to. The void between them is not absence, it is belonging. It connects each point of light into a single tapestry. To gaze into it is to feel time slow, to sense the quiet continuity that runs through everything. It is the same continuity that carries breath in our lungs and thoughts in our minds. The universe, for all its immensity, is intimate. The awareness of our place in the void can change how we live. It invites us to listen more, to rush less, to find beauty in what is unspoken. The same patience that shapes galaxies can shape our days. The same balance that holds the cosmos together can hold our hearts steady. The void becomes a metaphor for peace, a reminder that silence is not the absence of meaning, but the space where meaning forms. Every pause, every gap, every breath is part of the same cosmic rhythm that has been unfolding since the dawn of time. And so, as this journey through the universe's quiet reaches its end, imagine yourself not as a spectator, but as part of the pattern. You are drifting gently within the vastness, surrounded by the slow glow of distant galaxies. Their light touches you softly, carrying stories billions of years old. Around you, space expands in perfect calm, and within you, understanding expands with it. The boundary between observer and observed dissolves. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, aware of itself. The stars drift, the galaxies breathe, the void hums with invisible motion. All of it continues endlessly, beautifully, without haste. And somewhere within that grand quiet, consciousness rests. You rest. The universe does not ask for belief or praise. It asks only for presence. To exist is enough. To see, to feel, to breathe inside this cosmic stillness is to fulfill the universe's oldest desire, to know itself. If you have drifted with me through this long silence, stay a little longer. Let your mind wander through the dark, where the galaxies shimmer like thought. Let the rhythm of the cosmos slow your breathing until it matches the expansion of space. This is the peace the universe offers, the peace of perspective. If this journey brought you calm, if it let you feel even for a moment the vastness that holds you, then carry that stillness with you. And when the stars call again, return. There will always be another story waiting in the quiet. Subscribe to Sleepy Science Drift, where knowledge moves like starlight, soft and slow, and where every question fades gently into wonder. Here, we drift together through science, through mystery, through silence itself, until even the universe seems to breathe beside us. The stars will keep shining, the void will keep expanding, and somewhere in that infinite stillness, you will find your place, glowing quietly, part of the grand and endless calm.